Hey, it's Michelle. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about all the stuff that I got up to in November of 2025. So as always, there'll be timestamps below if you want to jump around to any piece or part of this video. We're going to talk about some of the things that I got up to, take a look at some of the journals, planners, and decks that I worked with. Those are primarily the things I cover in these videos. If you have other things you'd like to hear me talk about, definitely let me know in the comments below. So let's jump on into my planner, because that is how I remember what I actually did in a month. What I basically do is, record the things I have going on. Sometimes I like to put some memory things in here, games I'm playing, basic task list for the week, things that I end up doing, videos that I have coming out when, family members are out of town. Sometimes when we go and do like little adventures, I'll include little pictures in here. So at the beginning of November, there was a nice, fairly warm, sunny day. So we jumped in the Bronco, took Pascal, and we went for a drive up to St. Helens. So we stopped at a few little places along the way, took Pascal for some little walks, and then we ended up kind of doing a little bit of off-roading. Sort of. I mean, it's not really off-road, but it's these old logging roads. They're all over Washington. Some of them are still, used today. So they're really well maintained, like the one that we went on, where you can basically drive through these forested areas, go check out the view, kind of get a little bit off the grid. Of course, we had Pascal with us, so we kind of drove for a little bit, and then we would get out. We would kind of just walk around and explore. It was a lot of fun just to get away and just to kind of take this beautiful drive over the weekend. We laughed because the dogs had a grooming appointment that Saturday, and then Sunday was when we took the drive. So we got, Pascal groomed and then took him to the woods. So that was kind of funny. But I also made a note that we watched the new Frankenstein movie, which was excellent. I actually have a page for it in my everything journal, which we'll take a look at here in a moment. And then just kind of moving through the week, I note when I have things going on. I note games that I'm playing. This is a very game heavy week. I had lots of fun with friends this week. I did these little dragonflies in my planner because when we took that drive on Sunday to Mount St. Helens, one of the places that we stopped, there was just mass amounts of dragonflies. I don't know if it was like dragonfly mating season or what, but they were just everywhere. And so I wanted to include those in my planner, just kind of a little reminder to pull that energy in with me throughout the month. So moving into the next week, again, sometimes I will have appointments and things that get changed and canceled. And a lot of times that's when you see like stickers and washi over stuff. It's because I had an appointment or I had something going on and it got canceled, rescheduled, whatever it is. And so I would just cover it up with washi and then it still looks nice. And I don't have like all these marked off cancellations all over my planner. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. And then here is coming into the week where I'm filming this, where I still have, some stuff to do. This also happens to be Thanksgiving week. So I know that kind of the latter part of the week is more going to be just family time. So I'm not going to have much to put in there, but I do have quite a bit of things that I need to finish up for the week. I really love the way this page came out. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed putting this one together. I just really wanted to sink into that fall vibe and kind of just try to figure out, I feel like towards the end of the year, I'm always trying to figure out how am I going to do my planner next year? What sort of energy do I want? What sort of layout do I want? This particular one works really well for me, so I probably just need to stick with it. But it's always fun to just kind of go into it with that sort of an idea of if I were setting this up as kind of a preview for next year, what do I want it to look like? And I think it came out beautiful. I really, really love it. So also here in the back of my weeks, I've been doing just daily logging, which is not anything fancy. It's not even every single day. It's just messy. I'm just writing down what I need to do and then checking things off. I will probably continue this process through 2026, although I have a whole nother video that I'm going to be sharing with you all here very soon, where I'm going to talk about the planners, the practices, and the journals and the things like that I'm going to be using moving into the new year. But that was basically my November in my planner. So let's go ahead and jump into my everything journal next. I do have tarot readings and stuff in here as well. We'll talk about the decks that I worked with in November in the next little part of this video. But I did just want to mention that I was doing in my member space, I sometimes do some journal with me's, and I was journaling my November vibe, which I'll show you here in a minute, the cover page. And as I was going through that, I kind of had some realizations that I needed to like somehow distinguish that this first part was October. So if you remember when I first showed this, I had this over here. I simply peeled it up, put it over here, and then made a new one for October. So all of my October pages are in here now. And then what I did was in my member space, I journaled my November vibe, and this was how it ended up coming out. I really love the look of it. I love the kind of torn paper, all the stuff just piled on. And that was kind of how I was feeling in November. Just everything was just piled on. Not necessarily in a bad way, like I just had a lot going on, but also it felt like a lot. And then I also had this obsession with bugs. I don't know why. Like when I was making this page, I needed bugs. It was a thing. It was a thing. You had to be there. Anyway, then moving into my first spread, I did this reading here with these few decks, which I'll share with you more in detail here in a moment. One of the things that I did with this one was really fun was I drew the little hourglass thing. I mean, it's not great, but I drew it onto the card, and then I used some stickers and some printouts from the cards themselves to kind of create this visual collage over here. Added some butterflies and this little crazy monster from the LeBlanco Tarot. This was such a fun one because it was a little bit of creating art and a tarot reading and sort of just all the things all in one, which is one of the things that I really love about this journal, is that it does allow me to kind of do all of those things in one place. And of course, I've got just a little bit of my reflection about like how time's just going. Like it's just going, and I feel like I'm getting left behind with it. So here was the page that I did on Frankenstein, because we watched the new movie, of course, which just reminded me how much I love the Frankenstein book and I love the whole energy of it. And so I wanted to just kind of do a little collage here in my journal. And this is one of the things that I really want to focus on doing next year as well, is just letting those moments happen in this space. I had a lot of fun putting this one together. It was kind of this idea of like tearing things and then stitching them back together and creating this little layout to remind me that like we watched this movie, but also I kind of reconnected with that story as well. And it was just a lot of fun to do. This one was a tarot reading that I did. Again, just, kind of looking at the key things, my key takeaways, doing some doodling with it, some stickers. It just allows me a little moment of play in my journal, and I really appreciate that. This particular spread, I was having turned out to be a pretty bad week overall, but it was definitely a bad day. It was a very, very rough morning, and I just needed to take some time away. I think I did this one as a reel on Instagram as well, where I needed to get out some of my decks that really felt like in this vibe for me. I'm not going to share these decks with you because I have shown them so many times on my channel. This is the Diablo Tarot. I have a whole video dedicated just to this deck if you want to find out more about how I feel about it and how I work with it. And then I have the Goetia Tarot, the Notoria Tarot, the Citadel Oracle, and then this is from the True Sight Oracle. These three are all mass market, as is the Citadel Oracle, and then the True Sight is an indie Oracle deck. I love these all together. Again, I've done many videos talking about them, so I'm not going to drag them all out here because I really did only work with them for this one reading, where I just needed to let the shit go. It was a really bad, really rough morning. And then I found this on Instagram, and unfortunately I cut out wherever it came from. I still have the image saved so I can look it up if I need to, but it just says a woman who embraced her scars is art. And I was just really feeling that energy at the time that I did this. I don't think I actually included this in the video because I found this after the fact and added it in later on that day. It was kind of just a reminder that there can be something beautiful out of those hard moments as well. And I really needed that reminder that day and really that whole week because it was a rough one. And then this is the last reading that I did in here. Again, another thing I really love about this is not feeling like the pressure to do stuff in here all the time. I just do it when I feel like it. So I did this little reading. Again, I'll talk about these cards here in a moment. And I did some dice casting here, which you can see, which here's my interpretations for those. And I did some doodling with this one. I love the idea of bringing my own art in with the writing and the dice and the cards and just bringing them all together in one place. This reading was basically hold space, which was this card. And I felt like it was tied into this judgment energy here. We had this cross card in the center. And then I had Embrace Your Shadow, which came out over here with the Seven of Swords. And I kind of put these together, and then I dice cast over the top of that to get kind of that bigger picture energy. And it was great. It was a great reading. It was something that I definitely needed to help me kind of wrap up the end of this month to kind of bring things together. So yeah, it just not a ton. I didn't do a ton of journaling in here, but I really enjoyed what I did. I felt like it was very intentional. I felt like I got a lot out of it every time I did it. And so it was a great little experience. So let's talk about the decks that I worked with the most throughout the month. I've got just a couple of selection of decks here to share with you. Let's start with the LeBlanco Tarot because this was a new to me deck, as was this little oracle that I'm going to show you here in a moment. I really, really love this deck. Here's the beautiful backs. It is matte gilded. This is a mass market deck from Llewellyn. It was indie. It's one of those decks that like I just missed the boat every time it came out indie, and I was always so sad about it. So I was really excited to find it was coming out mass market, and it's been on my list, like just waiting to come out. It finally released and I got it, and I have been absolutely loving working with it. There's just something about this art that just really speaks to me, and I got some really fantastic readings out of it. So I'll share with you just a few of the decks that I paired with it. I used my Earth and Bone Oracle as kind of my focus point in most of my readings with the LeBlanco Tarot this month. I have completely modified this deck. There is a video, I do believe, on my channel. I've trimmed it down and I wrote all the keywords on the cards and I etched it. So it doesn't come like this, but I modified it to work a little bit better for me and how I work with my cards. But I really enjoyed this one as a focal point. It created this really beautiful anchor for all of my readings. And then I could use the LeBlanco to really tie into that and to go a little bit deeper. There's that cross card, definitely got that one. To go a little bit deeper into what these mean. I love that portal card. Let me just show you here. We'll do a little sort of playing with pairs so you can see how they work together. I really enjoyed these two together. I think they worked really beautifully. The Earth and Bone, it does have a nice little guidebook, but I don't ever get into it because I just really don't feel like I need to. I get exactly what I need as a focal point from the imagery and then the keyword that I wrote on it, which I do believe actually was printed on the cards. I didn't make them up. They came with it, but I feel like they work really, really well together. So we have like Heart between the Two of Swords and Justice. Beautiful. I did a lot of my readings where I would pull that conscious, subconscious, superconscious. That's definitely how I worked with these decks most of the month. Beast, Seven of Pentacles, and Nine of Wands. Love that. I know I've shown it many times before, but let me just give you a little idea of how. So if I pull a card, I've got the key. I would use that as my anchor point, and then I would pull my cards around it from the LeBlanco. So let's just go ahead and throw some cards down and see what we get. We've got the Wheel of Fortune. So for me, that's conscious. That's what I know. That's what's in my awareness currently. And then in the subconscious, we have Strength. So what I'm not currently aware of or what I need to bring into my awareness. And then the superconscious over here, we've got the Six of Cups. So what kind of higher self is trying to get me to see, to understand. And this is definitely how I worked with these decks throughout the majority of the month. And then I paired it with this little Memento Mori. I just found this one on Amazon, I think. And it's just a really small. It's a really small little deck. Size-wise and the number of cards, because I think it only has 36, which is really like skirting the line of what I think is appropriate. But here's the backs. It's a tiny little deck. It's got that shiny gold gilding, but like it works. I love the artwork in this deck. There is just something about it that it really just tickles something in me, and I just absolutely love it. I love the little key phrases on it. I think I've mentioned before in other videos where I like to use these as kind of like punctuations. So they're kind of like commas or periods or exclamation points or things like that in my readings. And so I'll kind of like weave them in along the way. I love these little pocket oracles for that. It's definitely kind of how I'm working with my decks these days. So like, for example, I have the Wheel of Fortune and the Strength. So the Wheel of Fortune in my conscious, the Strength in my subconscious. And so I would pull a little Memento Mori to kind of connect those two. So like the comma between the two of them. And this one says Feed the Future. So Wheel of Fortune and strength, and the connecting point is feed the future. And then going up from the subconscious to the superconscious, between strength and the Six of Cups, we would have support. So I would use these as sort of connecting points. You could kind of go all the way around if you wanted to, which is also really fun. I really enjoyed this whole process of working with these together in this way, just because we're here and I don't have like a ton of decks to show you. Let's just do one more. So let's just randomly pull a card out of here, and we've got Nest. So let's see what we need to know about Nest. Let's just pull a few LeBlanco around it. This is definitely my favorite style of reading right now. So in the conscious realm, what we know is the Eight of Cups. We know it's time to walk away from some things. We know we're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Absolutely. Is that Nest or Rest? That's Nest, I think. And then in the subconscious realm, we've got the Hierophant. Oh, interesting. Okay. That's what needs to be brought into awareness. And then for the superconscious, what the higher self is trying to get us to know is the High Priestess. Absolutely. I love that. All right, let's pull a few of these little memento moris to kind of connect them all together. So between the Eight of Cups and the Hierophant, we've got Forgive. Well, isn't that beautiful? And then between the Hierophant and the High Priestess, we've got Passion Burns Bright. I love that. You can continue to connect these as well if I wanted. So like if I wanted to pull up and kind of come full circle, I could definitely do that. So let's see what happens if I come full circle between the High Priestess to Nest, and we get Let It Go. And then if we go from Nest to the Eight of Cups, I've got Rewind and Reset. Interesting. So now I've kind of done this and I've gone full circle. I could spread these out so like you could see them better, but I don't want to like pop off camera. So again, I love using these smaller cards to connect these larger cards. So what's the connection point? What's going to get me from Eight of Cups to bringing this Hierophant into my awareness? Because remember, this is down here in my subconscious. It's that forgiveness. So there's something in here that I need to forgive in order to tap into that Hierophant energy and to bring it into conscious awareness, to bring it into my nest here, which is feeling to me like this is what I need to like cultivate in order to support myself. So I need to forgive myself for something over here in this Eight of Cups. And then to connect this Hierophant to this High Priestess, I have to let that passion fuel that process, fuel that connection to that intuition, again, bringing that into my nest. So it's just a really fun way to work with my cards. I know I keep talking about it like over and over again, but this is just how I've been working with my cards. So along with showing you the same decks over and over again, because I'm not bringing a ton of new things into my collection currently, I'm also going to be sharing with you repeatedly doing the same thing over and over again with my cards, because that is pretty much how I work with them. So I like doing these sort of 3 layers of self check-ins. And I found that these particular decks work really well for that. I really enjoy the LeBlanco. It's a great one for sort of tapping into that inner self energy. And as an access point to that conscious, subconscious, superconscious, like it's a beautiful one for that. The Earth and Bone really gives me that like really kind of grounded focal point, which I love. And then kind of just layering that memento mori in between really works beautifully for just those punctuations in my reading. So another little trio of decks that I worked with throughout the month are the Hush Tarot, which is just a beautiful deck. I feel like this deck really presents my life and my practice really well right now. And I paired that with the Southern Botanical Oracle. I used this combo quite a bit for not only personal readings, but also for some stuff that I was doing with writing. I'll talk about each one of them here in a moment. And then I also threw in this little secret pocket oracle in the same way I just showed you that I did with the Memento Mori. This was one of those punctuation decks. So let's talk about each of these real quick. The Hush Tarot, here's the backs. I have modified mine, so I've just edged it. This deck is just such a beautiful, like, death and decay deck. It's a great one for this time of year because I feel like it really represents that letting things die and kind of making space for the new to grow. It feels like a deck of decay, of release, of kind of exploring the not so pretty side of things. And it's such a great one for that kind of energy for this time of year of just like, what do I need to bury? What do I need to let die? What do I need to let wither under the winter snow? And then maybe it will, rebloom again in a more productive way in the next year. And I really love this deck for that. This deck also really hones in on one of my books that I'm writing, so one of my fiction books that I am getting ready to finish up and hopefully get out in the new year. It represents that energy really beautifully, so I used it a lot for readings around the book, and then I paired it with this Southern Botanical deck, which is just one of my favorites. I have several of this creator's decks, and I really, really enjoy a lot of them. Again, they have those beautiful keywords where I can really tap into those. And that's kind of how I worked with this one, is letting the oracle serve as the focal point and then pulling, cards for those keywords. I did a couple of different readings with this one throughout the month. Just kind of show you how these ones go together. Then we'll talk about the pocket oracle that I threw in here. Most of the time when I have this deck on the table, what I'm looking at is this is my focal point with Fairy Lily, and then I have mischief and sabotage. So I would look to my tarot cards to go, where is the sabotage? It's here over here in the Empress, and where is the mischief? It's over here in this King. And I work with those energies. Sometimes I pull in more cards. Sometimes I get a little bit deeper into the reading, depending on what it is that I'm looking for. But just as a general jumping off point, this works beautifully with just tapping into the main focus point, that hickory, and then looking at those keywords in relation to my tarot cards. It's just a great way to get a quick but succinct reading. I feel like it works really well, and I have the opportunity to dive deeper when I want to really, start drilling down into what each of these cards mean and how they relate to the questions that I'm currently asking, or the information that I'm currently seeking, or the guidance that I'm looking for, depending on, if I'm coming to the cards for personal things because I'm feeling this energy, or because I need to know something in terms of my book or my writing, or something to do with that story or that plot. These both work really well for that. It really sits in the energy of this time of year as well as the story that I'm writing. So it was a beautiful fit for this month, and just really letting me to sink into those energies. So let me just share with you real quickly how I worked with this one in terms of just pulling in those key phrases here and the keywords. So here we have swamp lily with stagnation and entrenchment. And then I would pull my Hush Tarot, and we've got the Queen of Pentacles over here in stagnation, pretty funny, and the Ten of Wands over here with entrenchment. So really interesting. Again, I could pull in more cards if I wanted to. I did a few bigger readings with this, but one of the things I also like to do is use this little secret pocket oracle. I'm pretty sure I talked about this one last month too, because I think it's been on my table for several months now. This is another great one to just like throw amidst my readings, even though it just has titles on it. Like, I totally know what all these things mean to me. And so it's great. I love working with it. I love its little tiny nature. Sometimes I will literally like cast these cards over the top and just kind of throw them down and see where they land. Sometimes I use them as sort of those punctuations in a reading. So if I've got my Queen of Pentacles, let's see what we get between, we've got the shovel with the Queen of Pentacles and stagnation. So like digging up that shit that is stagnating right now, like getting rid of it, digging it up. That's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. So let's see what we get between the entrenchment and our Ten of Wands here. And we've got the bone. So I feel like what we're digging up is the bones of this work. I feel like that's where we're at. And I love these readings because I could stop here. I could have stopped with the 3 cards, but if I'm feeling like there's more to be unearthed here, I could keep adding. And like, that's such a fun thing to do with these decks. So let's just go ahead and let's just keep adding just for the fun of it. I'm going to pull another card. So now I've got the 10 of Swords. So that's beautiful. I feel like there's a lot of unearthing of things that need to happen here because we are in this sort of stagnation, this entrenchment. We're feeling a little bit too locked into this energy and trying to find our way out. So let's pull another one of these little secret pockets. We've got a dragon. Beautiful. So maybe like tapping into that fierceness to unearth these bones, to dig them up of what it is that is actually causing this stagnation and this entrenchment, not allowing you to move forward. I'd say allowing me, because this is probably me. It's probably calling me out. And I love readings like these because like I can just keep going. It's so much fun. I really enjoy it. I'm going to move these up just a little bit because I am going to we're just going to keep going here just for the fun of it. If you like videos like this, definitely come check out my member space because I do a lot of this type of stuff in a member space, always talking about my personal readings, and I do journaling and things like that. There's going to be some fun stuff coming in 2026. So, I mean, a little bit of a shameless promotion there, but like, legit, it's what we do in that space. We hang out and we play with cards like this, and we do journaling, and we have practice that we share. Okay, just real quick, I'm going to throw, because I do have another set of decks that I want to share with you. This is the little Between the Worlds, Beyond the Worlds, the one I can never remember the name of it, that I've modified it. I'm pretty sure I talked about it last month too, because it's always hanging out. So I've got the thimble with Work and Play. I feel like that one came up when I did my reading in member space, which is pretty funny. So I feel like this combination here of work and play, like this is what the stagnation is. It's around the work and play. And I feel like I don't need any more because this is giving me all the information that I need. And I could really dive into this and see, what I need to do now moving forward with this information. And I really, really love working with these decks in this way. This particular little combo, like I said, not only feels like it fits really well with the current energy, with the season here in the Pacific Northwest, because things are starting to die and it's starting to get gloomy and rainy, and I feel like this whole energy works really well for that. But again, worked really well for my writing that I was doing, because it definitely ties in to the book that I'm writing, the fiction that I'm currently working on. And it's such a great one. I was trying to put all these away. I wasn't intending to show you this deck today, but things happen when you're in the moment, and it is one that pretty much consistently lives on my table or very close to it, table adjacent. But these, I forgot the little guidebook. But these three were definitely ones that I worked with throughout the month. I did a reading in member space where I was kind of working through a closure reading, which is really what it ended up being. So that was a really fun one. I used some of these decks in that. So the last few decks that I want to share with you today are the decks that I used in the Enchanted Library, which is the guided tarot practice that we've been doing in 2025 in my membership. And for this month, for November, the theme was Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And so the two decks that I used for that practice were the Cottage Witch Oracle and the John Bower Tarot. Let's just talk about these, because I know I've mentioned this deck many times. This is the beautiful little oracle deck that Krista created. It is absolutely stunning. I love the energy of it, the keywords and the items, and it's just such a great one. It's spot on every time. It just kind of tells me exactly what I need to know when I need to know it. And I really, really enjoy working with this one. And it paired really beautifully with the John Bower. Now, the John Bower is such a great little fairy tale deck. This is actually my second copy of this deck that I've had, because the first one, I actually created a sort of more of an oracle out of it. I took all the titles off. I'm pretty sure there is a video of it somewhere buried in the archives on my channel. And I really, really loved that one as well, but I was just feeling like I needed to put the tarot titles back. So I picked up another copy of it, and this one I've just kept all the titles on it because I do like pulling in the tarot associations. And these two were great. These were the only two decks that I used in my Enchanted Library practice for the month, and they worked beautifully because each reading throughout the month, each spread that we did tied into the sort of this first spread. So it was kind of a waterfall effect. If you've heard me talk about my waterfall readings or seen me do any of those, where I kind of start with one reading throughout a month and then we add to it along the way. And this was kind of the premise for how we worked with this one. There were also some dice activities. So these were the dice that I used, just my little coffee colored ones. They're just little cheapy Amazon dice. I really love these decks together. They work so beautifully. Again, just giving me that really succinct focal point in the center, and then letting the story unfold through the John Bower Tarot is just really, really beautiful. the energies are really compatible between these two decks. I feel like all of the things that exist in the Cottage Witch could also exist in the world of the John Bauer. I feel like it's things we would find within this landscape, and so they work really beautifully together, and the messages are just so spot on. I just feel like I get exactly what I need. It's great to have an oracle deck like the Cottage Witch that is so succinct and just really tells you exactly what it is that you need to know. It doesn't really leave you guessing for what's going on, because when we are looking at a deck like the John Bauer, where this is curated art, so it's not necessarily art created for the tarot, it's art that's been fitted to the tarot. And sometimes the messages can get a little bit blurred in that way, because we're not entirely sure how this art is supposed to relate to that particular card. Like here we have the Ace of Wands. So how are we supposed to relate the story of what's going on in this card of this little princess here? And we've got some sort of goblin energy going on back here, very, very large things hiding behind this big tree and this little goblin guy. Like, we have to look at that and really dive into that. And how does that really tie into this energy of the Ace of Wands? And that can be a lot with decks like this. There's a lot of storytelling and narrative potential there, but also it can be very overwhelming. And so to pair it with a deck like the Cottage Witch, where it's very like toad, shelter, perfect. Like, I know exactly what that's trying to tell me. And then I can use that as I've got both familiar cards in here. You can use that as a jumping off point. So what is this reading about? What's the focal point? It's about rabbit and creativity. So rabbit feels like quick moving creativity. And we've got the Seven of Swords here, also feels very quick moving. Like, we're moving quickly through our creative efforts. But over here, we've got this Two of Pentacles, and this feels much more grounded. And like, you can follow those quick moving sparks of creative inspiration, but you do have to kind of solidify them into something that you can move forward in a long-term way, right? And so I love these decks for working with that kind of energy. These are beautiful for any sort of creative work. They're beautiful for narrative, doing narrative readings, which is definitely something that I do a lot of, where I kind of just let the stories unfold. You see those happen a lot in my one-shot readings. Those are very narrative most of the time. I like to use dice. I like to use my cards. I like to pull in lots of different oracles, tarots, sometimes other systems. And this is such a beautiful combo for that, because it really allows you to sink into that story. So those are just a really beautiful, beautiful combination. I really enjoyed these together. So that was a look at the things that I got up to in November, the journaling, planners, and the decks that I worked with. As always, you'll find links for everything I've shown here in the description box below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you had a wonderful November, and I wish you many blessings moving into December.